morning, everybody. Mr. Rajiv asked me to talk about the basic principles of rose growing in the greenhouses, polyhouses, protected cultivation, whatever you call it. And I added a small two-letter word for export because one, even if you grow good quality roses for the local market, the sales realization is much better. Number one. Number two, you can always give your exportable stems to a person who is directly exporting roses. And I consult for a lot of the rose projects who are exporting to countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. In Europe, London is our primary target. These are the basic destinations for us. And without wasting much time, I'll get into, because I have a lot of slides to show you. Bangalore's weather is nice. You can jog. I will jog. We'll jog with the slides. I'm Thilak Subbaih, basically consulting for roses. I don't do any other crop. That's my email ID if you need to contact me for any information, tksubbaih@hotmail.com. I'll get back to you. 24 hours is the return. And my mobile is 93436 77185. Now, just like Mr. Rajiv asked us a question, why greenhouses? I'll pose the same question. Mr. Rajiv had a lot of answers to the question, why greenhouses, but I have only one answer. To grow export quality flowers with high production levels. That is the basic objective of why we grow roses under greenhouse conditions. We want export quality flowers with high production levels. Now, this industry of growing roses under greenhouse conditions started in India in about the mid-90s, I would say 93, 94. The government of India saw this industry as the sunrise industry because they said it is capable of earning us a lot of foreign exchange. Now, most of the Western countries, European countries, including European countries plus Australia, New Zealand, all this, they have very severe winters. When you have very severe winters, you have to heat the greenhouses and you have to provide additional lighting. Both are energy consuming. Energy costs are very high in Europe. So that tends to the cost of production per stem. So the easiest thing for these growers sitting in Europe or in Australia or New Zealand is to import roses from tropical countries like India. That was the objective of starting rose production in greenhouses in India in the mid-90s. And that is the time when the government pushed banks and financial institutions to lend finances to growers. So there are a lot of people who came into this industry. And then we have gone through several phases, I would say, in the last 20 years. And now we have come to a point where we know our cards. So at that time, the advantages that were quoted was we have adequate light throughout the year. Compare this to most of the other countries which don't have adequate light throughout the year, which means they have to do additional lighting, more energy, more expensive. No heating is required in the winters. Our winters are not severe enough that we have to use additional heating. Maybe we have to do some cooling in the summer because our summers are getting to be really hot, but a fan and pad cooling system is really not required. And the amount of rainfall that you get during the export season is very minimal. Our export season starts around September and goes until March. That is the export season for India. And during this time, we don't have or we hardly have any precipitation, that is rainfall, because with rainfall comes problems, more problems. The soil is still good for roses. I say this because in a country like the Netherlands, growing roses or any other flower crop in greenhouses is banned in the soil. You cannot grow roses in soil because of the leaching of nutrients and polluting the groundwater. So you have to grow it in artificial media like rock wool or coco peat or pumice or any other media. But in India, the soil in most areas, I say in most areas, is still good for roses. And the water quality is also good in many areas. And I still put a small question mark next to that because in my experience of 20 years with roses, I have seen that the water quality is deteriorating very fast. What used to be a EC of 0.4 10 years back is probably about 1.4 today. A high EC means bad quality water. I'll get into that a little later. And when this industry came into being in India, the labor costs were relatively low. we were paying 45, 35, 50 rupees. Today it has gone through the roof. We are paying 180 to 200 rupees per person. The cost of producing one single stem, just the labor cost is between 50 and 70 paisa. So the labor costs are not relatively low anymore, but that was seen as a distinct advantage at the time when this industry was started in India. So what are the objectives of growing? The first objective is to grow long, strong and straight stems. I just remembered to pick up a stem from home. This is a long, strong and straight stem. This is export quality. I'll just pass it around a little later. But you see the length of the stem is about 70 centimeters. It is strong and it is straight. This is the first objective. Now, the second objective is the flowers have to open easily. Large flowers, because export markets demand large head sizes. This is the head. It has to be a minimum of 4 to 5 centimeters. There are markets which accept smaller buds like New Zealand, but most of the destinations want buds that are 4, 5 centimeters. So large flowers that open easily is one of the other objectives. Open easily. Now if you harvest the flowers too early, the flower has to travel for 2 to 3 days. It has to go to the importer, then the wholesaler, then the retailer, then the florist, then to the end consumer. If it doesn't open, then you won't get your payments. So the flowers have to open easily. And flowers have to have good color and shape. Now this is top secret or Taj Mahal. It has to have the color of the variety that is desired. Now there are certain situations where a yellow variety becomes white if the sunlight intensity is very high. You can't send an export flower which is a yellow variety as white. That is due to breakdown of certain pigments in the flower. So the flowers have to have good color and shape. Now in any market, it is not just the flower that we look at. We look at the entire stem, which means the leaves also have to be good. There are many situations where the leaves can become scorched because of sun scorch, because of chemical scorching, because of caterpillar damage, and so many other reasons. So if your leaf quality is not good, then it is not an exportable stem. Stems with short internodes. Now the distance between two successive leaves is what we call an internode. For export stems, the distance between two leaves has to be small. If it is grown under hot conditions, then the internodal length becomes too much. And that is not a very good attribute for, and of course, maximum production. So how do we achieve our objectives? First is by creating a microclimate for the plant. What does the plant want? It needs a nice microclimate in terms of temperature, humidity and light. The second thing is we have to protect the plants from rain and other weather elements, be it winds, be it hailstorms, be it excessive sun. So we have to protect the plants. And we also have to protect the plants from pests and diseases. I'm not saying that the plants grown in greenhouses are completely protected from pests and diseases, but if you compare to plants that are grown outdoors, we have a better control over pests and diseases in the greenhouses. And we also try to do precise water and fertilizer management. This is how we have achieved our objective. And our growing practices are very intensive in the greenhouses. And more than anything else, after the flowers are harvested, we take care of the flower. We adopt proper harvest and post-harvest procedures, which I'll touch in a few minutes. The basic essentials for rose growing. What do you need? You need good light. Now in roses, as the light intensity increases, the vigor increases, the growth increases, the production increases, the quality increases, and after 60,000 lux, there is no added benefit. So I say anywhere between 40 to 60,000 lux is the optimum light requirement for roses. Temperature 15 to 28 degrees centigrade is ideal for roses, but more than just light or temperature, it is the balance between the light and temperature that is very important for roses. And a humidity of 60 to 65% is required in the greenhouses. Roses love humidity. If you don't maintain 60 to 65%, you can assume your rose plant is not doing well. Good quality water, I'll tell you what good quality water is, but it is a basic essential for rose growing. And a good growing medium, whether it is soil or rock wool or coco peat or pumice, you have to have a good growing medium. No or little wind, because winds bring problems, so it's a basic essential for rose growing. Influence of temperature. Among all the weather parameters or microclimatic parameters inside the greenhouse, I consider temperature to be one of the most important, because temperature is known to influence the flower color. As I told you a few minutes back, yellow varieties can become white, and bicolored varieties don't show that contrast. For example, if you have a variety with an orange and red color, the contrast between orange and red is not proper. The number of petals can be influenced by temperature. Higher the temperature, lower will be the number of petals, so your bud sizes go down. The length of the neck. Neck is the portion between the first leaf and the flower. The length of the neck is influenced by temperature. Higher the temperature, longer will be the neck. Stem length. The stem length goes down when the temperatures go up. So there's an inverse relationship. Higher the temperature, shorter will be the stem. Number of flowers. The number of flowers will increase because the stem tends to take fewer number of days. Now, for example, this stem probably takes about 52 to 55 days in the winter, but in the summer it takes 45 days. So that means you get more than 7 or 7.5 cycles. So the number of flowers produced per square meter goes up. Occurrence of physiological disorders. Now, the optimum day temperature for growing roses is 26 to 28. You don't have this in India anywhere. But this is a book reading. 26 to 28 is the most optimum temperature for growing roses, and the night temperature should be between 16 to 18. The other thing that I want to stress on is there should not be a big variation between the day and night temperature, because if the variation between the day and night is too much, then there can be problems. The plant tends to use up all its sugar, number one. Number two, it tends to grow longer. So 26 to 28 during the day and 18 to 20 during the night is perfect. Of course, we adopt various methods of temperature control, roof shading, chalking, and various combination of white compounds. We use shade nets, 35 to 40%. Mr. Rajiv Roy has spent quite some time yesterday talking about shade nets, so I won't go into any details. And apart from roof shading and shade nets, we also do misting and hosing. We adopt ground misting or overhead fogging. One precaution, if you want to do overhead fogging, make sure the quality of the water is good. If you have a lot of calcium, magnesium and bicarbonates, it can leave very bad residues on the leaves and it's not good for export. Ground misting works by evaporative cooling, and we hose all the exposed areas.
Is it ground misting or overhead fogging? Either of them or both of them?
You can use either of them. Both do the same thing, but if you want to go in for overhead fogging, there are two things. When the water falls on the leaf, it evaporates and takes the heat out of the leaf. But the quality of the water has to be good, because if you have calcium and magnesium, after you do overhead fogging or misting, the water dries up, calcium combines with bicarbonate becomes calcium bicarbonate, magnesium combines with bicarbonate becomes magnesium bicarbonate, and it leaves a nasty residue on the leaf, which is not accepted for export. I spoke about water. Water is a very important input in rose greenhouses. You can use borewell water as long as it is good, and you can collect rainwater. Now, the supply throughout the year has to be ensured. Anybody putting up a rose project, the first thing I ask them is, how much water do you have? Because if you want to grow 1 hectare of roses, 1 hectare is about 80,000 plants. 2.5 acres is 80,000 plants. We generally give about 400 ml to 500 ml per plant. So you need 40,000 liters for drip. Added to that, your misting, your hosing, your sprays, your bucket water. 50 to 60,000 liters per hectare per day is the minimum quantity of water required. So if you have 10 hectares of roses, you are talking about 5 to 6 lakh liters water per day. The $1 million question is, where do you get this water from? Do you have enough borewells to give you that? Because the borewells have to get recharged. If you take out 5 to 6 lakhs of water from the borewells, there has to be enough rain to recharge the borewell. You can't run the borewell for more than 10 to 12 hours. If you're running it for 20 to 22 hours, your borewell is going to conk very soon. So adequate supply has to be ensured before you put up a project. Because I know people who have put up projects and then started digging borewells. Then they sold the greenhouses. Quality to be checked well before planning. This also is a mistake that most growers do. They don't know what is in the water. When they start irrigating, fertigation, then the bad elements start accumulating in the soil. The plants don't do well, no productions, no stem lengths, no qualities, no bud sizes, no realizations. He has to dip into his pocket for more monies to run the project. And when it comes to water, I'm particularly interested in sodium, chloride, bicarbonates, sulfates, and the electrical conductivity. So whenever anybody comes to me, I tell them, go get your water tested for these elements. Do a good analysis, because if you have sodium and chloride, it is a saline water. Chlorides are not taken up by roses. They keep on accumulating in the soil. Over a period of time, your soil EC goes up. If you have too much of bicarbonates, then you have clogging of drippers. You can neutralize the bicarbonates with nitric acid or sulfuric acid, fine. But what happens is your trippers will get clogged, and if you have too much of sulfates, then you cannot get the stem lengths like this here because it competes with nitrates in the soil. Nitrates and sulfates are both negatively charged anions. If you have too much of sulfates, generally speaking, lower the EC of your water, better it is. You are in good shape. So whatever method you use, collect as much rainwater as possible from the greenhouses and then pump it to the rainwater harvesting tank. I think Bhavin will talk a little later about how to line your ponds and so on. Collect it and use it. This is the best. This is what I call liquid gold. This is liquid gold. There cannot be anything better than rainwater. And if you have 1 hectare of greenhouse and if you have 1 inch of rain, you get 2.5 lakh liters. 1 hectare, 1 inch of rain gives you 2.5 lakh liters. Save every drop. Use it. So to grow quality roses for export, what are the requirements? One is you need a greenhouse. Obviously, that is what we are talking about, covered with plastic. We need soil or other media. We need planting material of the variety that you want to grow. We need a drip system for water and fertilizers to be given to the plants. You need a misting system for humidity and temperature reduction. You need venturies or pumps to be able to do fertigation because we give nutrients through fertigation every day. And after the flowers are harvested, they have to be cooled because we cut them at 5% open or 7% open for export. Now, if you don't have a pre-cool and if you don't cool the roses, they just open. Open roses are not suited for export markets. We need a grading room to grade and we need a final cold room. More than anything else, I believe that a sound technical knowledge or support is requirement for growing quality roses. So the first requirement is greenhouses with top ventilation, but we also insist that we have side ventilation because then the number of air changes that you can get per hour is considerably increased. You can grow the roses in soil. This is natural soil. Now we don't need a very good soil for roses. A sandy loam with a pH of 6 to 7 is fine. If you want to go in for a heavy soil, make sure that the soil aeration and drainage is very good. And when I say a heavy soil, I'm talking about a soil that has more than 30 or 35 or 40% clay. When you do a textural analysis of the soil, if you find that your soil is a lot of clay, then make sure that you add enough amendments to make the soil porous, to hold lots of air and with good drainage. They can also be grown in troughs like this with coco peat. This is a trough containing coco peat. They can also be grown in media called pumice. It is not available in India, but it is grown in other countries in pumice, in troughs. And it can also be in buckets like this, grown in pumice. Now, coming to the planting material, there are many different kinds of planting material. I'm not going to bore you with all the different types of planting material because there are dormant ties, there are 1-year-old grafts, there are self-rooted cuttings and so on. But the 2 types of planting material that we use in India are, one is the budded plant. And so the part below the budding is the rootstock and the part above the leaves is the variety that you want to grow. So if you wanted to grow, for example, Taj Mahal, the portion that has the leaves is Taj Mahal and the lower part is your rootstock, which can be anything, I'll just tell you. The other kind of planting material that we use is a top graft. So the portion below the clip is your rootstock, the portion above the clip is your variety. So this is joined together, put a clip and give it for rooting as well as healing the cuts. So top grafts and budded plants are the only 2 types of quality planting material that we use. So there are different types of rootstocks for roses, Canina inermis, Indica, Manetti, but the ones that we commonly use are Rosa multiflora, which is thorny, and Natal briar. This is from South Africa. It gives you very good colors, but it is short-lived. The plant doesn't live for too long. So 90% of the time, our varieties, whatever be the variety, it is budded onto Rosa multiflora. Okay, the other biggest decision that a grower, new grower has to take is, what color do I grow? Because in roses, you have plenty of colors. You have red, you have white, you have yellow, you have peach, you have pink, light pink, dark pink, bicolors and so on. Now, either for the export market or for the local market, what is generally accepted and what I advise is 50 to 60% of your project has to be red. It sells in the local market, export markets also want red. You can do a fantastic job during Valentine. 20 to 25% of anybody's revenue comes from Valentine sales. pink, light and dark 15%, yellow will be 15%, orange will be 10%, white will be 5%, and bicolors, that is 2 colors in the same flower, will be 5%. Now, there are many varieties. There are thousands of varieties grown all over the world, but in India we grow about 35 to 40 varieties. The most popular varieties that are grown today are these. I don't want you to write down the names, but I just want to tell you that Taj Mahal are top secret. This is the stem that I have here. This is the most popular red variety as of today. There used to be Grand Gala, there used to be First Red, but not anymore. This is the variety. It is called top secret in the Pune area, and in the south it is called Taj Mahal. This is the best red variety for export and for the local market. Noblesse is pink, Gold Strike is yellow, White Avalanche, as the name suggests, is white, Corvette is orange. I'll just take you to this is Taj Mahal, red. This is Noblesse, which is salmon pink. It's a light pink. Gold Strike is yellow in color, very important variety for us. White Avalanche is white in color. This is Corvette, orange in color. Then we have Bon here, which is actually a pink. Then we have Tropical Amazon, which is an orange. Then we have Yamma, which is peach on the outside, pink on the inside. We have Hot Shot, which is a new variety from the last 3 years, which is also a pink. Then we have Cool Water. This is an old variety, but it is mauve in color. I don't know if you know the color mauve, M-A-U-V-E, mauve. It is pinkish blue, and it's a variety that's preferred in Australia and New Zealand. Then we have Orange Wow, a new variety. Then we have Wham, W-H-A-M, which is also a light pink. We have Sweet Avalanche, which is a light pink. We have Sovereign, which is red on the edges, new variety, Sovereign. Now, the other requirement for rose growing in greenhouses is a drip system. Drip laterals with pressure compensated or non-pressure compensated drippers are used, and we have a bed that is about 70 to 80 centimeters in width. So we have to use 2 laterals because we have 2 rows of plants, and the discharge capacity of the dripper can range from 1.2 liters to 4 liters, depending on so many things. But what is important is uniformity in delivery, especially when you have a slope in the greenhouse. One dripper will be giving you 2 liters, the other will be giving you 2.4 liters or maybe 1.6 liters. So make sure that there is uniformity in the drip delivery. And when you have a bad quality water, I mean lots of calcium, lots of magnesium, lots of bicarbonate, you will run into clogging problems with the drippers. Because as long as it is wet, you will not see it. But when it dries up, then you find that white powder, which is calcium and magnesium bicarbonate, and your drippers get clogged. Irrigation roses. Water requirement. How much do roses need? Well, it depends on the climate, it depends on the medium, it depends on the variety, it depends on the age, but we follow basic principles. What is lost through transpiration from the leaf, what is lost through evaporation from the soil has to be put back. They say that if you know how much water is to be given to your rose plant, you're a good rose grower. So roses need a lot of water, but they cannot stand wet feet. If your feet are in water, they don't, because there is oxygen deficiency in the roots, yellowing of the leaves, and they don't do well. Stem lengths fall. Underwatering. If you don't give enough water also, you will have problems. So how do you find out what is the best? We can use tensiometers like Rajiv showed yesterday. You can use pan transpiration. But I believe in green fingers. What is green fingers? Take a soil sample around the root system. Make it into a ball of earth, drop it from 1 feet above the ground level. If it falls, it is at field capacity. If you make a ball of earth and press it between your hands, and if it becomes a thread, it is much more than field capacity. So it is very important to figure out how much water your plants need. Well, it depends on the radiation transpiration. For example, if it is a very cold day and the radiation, this is the amount of light expressed in joules per centimeter square per day is only 500, then you need to give only 1 liter per meter squared per day. But if it is a very hot day like 4000 joules per centimeter square per day, then the transpiration losses can be as much as 8 liters per meter squared per day. So what I'm trying to tell you is you have to adjust your giving water on a daily basis depending on the transpirational and evaporational losses. Coming to the fertilizers, the amount depends on the growth stage, soil levels, water, medium, but we give fertigation or fertilizers to the plants every day. There are target values for the nutrient elements. We know what the soil should have, and I generally advise analysis of soil when there are problems, but we used to do this more often, but not anymore. So even in the soil, there are elements that need to be the target values in the soil. So if you take a soil sample for roses, this is what is to be present. nitrates 2.9 millimoles, ammoniacal form of nitrogen 0.1, and so on. So if it is less, then you have to adjust your fertigation so that you bring back your soil to this level. This is the target values in the soil. Now a fertilizer solution for roses, what we give on a daily basis, will have something like this. Nitrate nitrogen 156 ppm or milligrams per liter, calcium 132 milligrams per liter. This is a standard solution, but this is not something that you can follow blindly. You have to see what is in the water, you have to see what is in the soil, and then decide on a fertigation recipe. That is where most people go wrong. And if you are having a water like rainwater with a EC of 0, then this solution will give you about 1.7 millisiemens per centimeter. That is the EC. Okay, you have water, you put it through sand filters, you put it through disc filters, and then we have separate tanks for the A tanks because you cannot mix fertilizers. A tank, you have only calcium nitrate, potassium nitrate, iron, and acid. Rest of the fertilizers go into the B tank. So we have separate tanks, and if you have a very big project, I advise systems like this which completely control all the walls. All your drip and fertigation and online EC, online pH, everything is controlled by these automatic systems. So far we have seen what roses want and the importance of various microclimatic parameters. So how do we go about making a rose project, making a rose greenhouse? Start with leveling of the soil, make a level soil, build your greenhouse. I won't get into the types of greenhouses or anything. Then we add various amendments to the soil. Your soil is doesn't have farmyard manure, it doesn't have organic matter. We believe in about 30% organic matter in the top 30 centimeters of the soil. Organic matter content for roses is very important, so we add lots of soil amendments to enrich the soil with organic matter. And depending on the soil type, we also add other amendments like rice husk and so on to make it more porous. I recommend about 25 kilograms of farmyard manure per square meter for a new plantation. 25 kilograms of well decomposed, powdered, not smelling farmyard manure. And I recommend about 10 to 12 kgs of coco peat. Now, I'm sure you have dealt with coco peat. We generally don't get long fibers. We get the small fibers plus a little bit of the powder. This is fine. So we mix it into the soil and make the beds. So if you have a bay width of 8 meters, you can make either 5 beds or 6 beds. The bed should be about 70 to 80 centimeters at the top, about 90 centimeters at the bottom, and about 25 to 30 centimeters in height. Then we again add more amendments to the beds, pongamia cake, neem cake, paddy husk, and other amendments. We check the pH of the soil. If it is on the higher side, if it is on the lower side, we either add lime or gypsum to bring down the pH or bring up the pH. Once that is done, you make 2 trenches 40 centimeters apart and then do the planting. The spacing between the 2 rows is 40 centimeters. The spacing between the plants is 15 to 17 centimeters. We used to do 17 centimeters earlier. Now we are targeting more than 80,000 plants per hectare, so we do about 15 centimeters. There are pros and cons of each. Let's not get into the details. So if you have done your homework properly, then the plants start growing, and in about 3 weeks the plants have established, and in about 45 days the plants would have produced flowers like this. So once the plants have produced flowers like this, and once the plants are about 1.5 feet in height, once they have enough leaf areas, it is time to start constructing the foundation for the rose plant. What we do, we bend all the stems. We pinch the flowers and we bend all the stems. You see, all the stems are bent and they are below the horizontal level. So when you do that, then what happens is new shoots start coming from the crown. Crown is the portion where it was budded. So from the crown, there are dormant buds sitting all this time without making any growth. But when you bend the stem, then the plant has no way for making new growth. So what it does is, it asks these buds to germinate and you start getting the basals. We call them basals or the foundation stems. Strong basals are required if you have to build a nice framework. And then depending on the thickness of the basals, we do a second round of bending to get strong basals. But ultimately, if you look at a rose greenhouse, you see whatever you see at the bottom 30 to 40 centimeters is all strong basals. It is like the foundation for your building. If you have a strong foundation, then your first floor, second floor, third floor are strong, right? So all our production is on the basals. So after about 10 months, the project will look like this. Basals cut, stems 50 to 60, 70 centimeters, and producing stems of this quality. Now, the regular work in the greenhouses will be scouting for pests and diseases. As with any crop, you have lots of pests and lots of diseases in the greenhouse. It is very important to scout the greenhouses at least 2 to 3 times a week to check for the occurrence of pests and diseases. I'll tell you in a few minutes what the pests and diseases are, so that you can take up regular sprays in the greenhouse. Because if you have problems today and if you don't spray for a week, then the problem gets bigger and bigger. Then you have to spray the full greenhouse. If you are able to identify the problem in a bay and spray 3 bays tomorrow, then the problem will not spread, because chemicals are expensive, labor is expensive, and overall we tend to spend a lot on just chemical control. The other regular work is de-shooting. We call this de-shooting. Once the terminal bud has formed, then the axillary buds start growing. In physiology, we call this apical dominance. So as long as the stem is growing, the side buds are suppressed. But when the terminal bud is formed, then the axillary buds start growing, and that has to be taken out. This we do 2 times a week minimum, that is taking out the axillary buds. And since our target is to produce big sized heads, we cap the buds. This is done about 7 to 8 days before harvesting. Capping the buds with bud nets or bud caps results in a 10 to 12% increase in the bud size, and then you are ready to harvest. The stem is harvested on a second good leaf, and a good leaf in roses is 5 leaflets. You find a 3 leaflet leaf, 5 leaflet leaf, and a 7 leaflet. So you should have 2 good leaves to support the growth of the new stem. So the stem was harvested here, and you see the new sprout coming. That will again give you a stem after about 50 days. So we harvest roses every day, 365 days a year. And once the roses are harvested, they have to be immediately, I underscore immediately placed in a clean bucket containing clean water, 5 to 6 liters, with a preservative added, because bacterial contamination can be very high when the pH is on the higher side. So you bring down the pH of the water by adding either aluminum sulfate or citric acid. Keep the pH around 5 to 5.5, then bacterial growth is reduced. So we immediately put the stems in buckets containing clean water and a preservative, and as soon as possible transport it to the pre-cool. You cannot keep the buckets in the greenhouse. It has to be transported to the pre-cool, and in the pre-cool we keep it for 3 to 4 hours at 5 to 8 degrees centigrade. So the temperature requirement in the pre-cool room is 5 to 8. So here what happens is, in the stems, the rate of all metabolic reactions, whether it is sugar breakdown or respiration, comes down, so the flower will not open anymore. So once you have pre-cooled the stems at 5 to 8 degrees centigrade for 3 to 4 hours, then you bring it out into the grading hall and start grading the stems. You do length grading. For example, this is a 60 centimeter stem. It can range from 40 to 70 or 80 centimeters. So what this person is doing is, he is taking the roses and putting it into different heights, 40, 50, 60, 70. So once length grading is done, we do quality grading, and then we make it into bunches. To be able to do bunches, we have bunching stands. You can make bunches of 20 in one bunch. You can also make bunches of 10. It depends on the requirement of the buyer. Some markets ask for 20s, some markets ask for 10s, some ask for 5, some ask for 7. So depending on who is buying your roses in any of these destination countries, you have to make these bunches. And the bunches are stored in a cold room, not a pre-cool, but a cold room where the temperature is 2 to 5 degrees centigrade. In the pre-cool, it was 5 to 8, but in the cold room, it is 2 to 5 degrees centigrade. Now, here, the water again has a preservative, and we bring down the pH to 5, 5.5. So they are continuously taking up water. You cannot have the roses not taking up water. They have to be taking up water all the time, number one. Number two requirement, you cannot take them out of the cold room or warm temperatures. So the bunches will be sitting in the cold room till they are ready for export. So you have an export shipment today, the flight is at 4 o'clock, you start making the boxes. These are European boxes, very standard, 100 centimeters in length, 40 centimeters in width, and 20 centimeters in height. The volume is 0.08 cubic meters. And depending on the variety, the stem length, the head size, the packing, and so on, each box can hold from anywhere between 240 stems to 400 stems. That is what we put in each box. This is how we do the boxing. Sometimes we do the sleeving, that is put a transparent cover, sometimes we don't. We pack 240 to 400 stems and then we make the boxes like this, and then it is ready to take off for the airport. At the airport, there is also a cold chamber, and then it is made into a pallet and put into the cabin. The temperature inside the flight will also be about 8 to 10 degrees. So you see that the cold chain is maintained. We make sure that the flowers have taken up enough water before they are put into the boxes. So once we maintain the temperature, they don't lose any water. And once it reaches the export destination, the first thing that the gentleman does is chop a small piece of the stem and again put it in water. So that way they don't lose water. Okay. Now rose growing is not rosy. Let me tell you that. It is full of thorns. There are lots of pests and diseases bothering us, and we have to deal with them on a daily basis. The insect problems that we find very commonly in rose greenhouses are red spider mite. I don't want to get into the details, but let me tell you, we have good control over mites. The mite is a two-spotted red spider mite. It is called Tetranicus urticae. There are lots of mites, but the one that affects roses is the two-spotted red spider mite. The second one is thrips. The species that we have in roses is Scirtothrips dorsalis, if it is of any interest to you, caterpillars, whiteflies, and nematodes. I consider these as the major 5 problems in roses. Mites, they hide under the leaf, they suck the sap. So the first symptom that you have is this speckling, flecking they call it, white spots because of the sucking of the sap. And if you don't control it, this is what happens. The spider mites multiply in 8 to 10 days from egg to egg under high temperatures, low humidity conditions. They build webs. The leaf is gone. The plant has become unproductive. No productions, nothing. The second important pest in roses is thrips. Thrips is becoming a major pest in the last few years. Some of my colleagues in this audience will know how we are trying to combat thrips. Thrips feed on the petals, so they develop brown patches like this. The buds never open. They can also feed on the meristem, on the shoot apex. The bud doesn't open, the bud doesn't develop. It's a very important pest. We are able to control mites but not thrips. And we adopt various methods, chemical control. We use entomopathogenic fungi like Bavaria bassiana, Metarhizium anisopleae, Verticillium lecani, and so on. But still we are finding it difficult to control thrips. That is why I was raising questions. What do you have for thrips? Whiteflies, not a major issue, but sometimes when it goes uncontrolled can cause sooty mold, which is a fungus which develops on the leaves. And the nymphs are found underneath the leaf surface. There are various methods of controlling whiteflies. Caterpillars is another major problem, and it generally shows up after the rains. We have 2 types of caterpillars. One is the one Spodoptera litura, also called the army worm, cutworm, which eats the leaves. And we also have Helicoverpa armigera, which is primarily boring the buds. And the disease problems in rose growing are again 5: powdery mildew, downy mildew, black spot, cane canker, and dieback. Powdery mildew, as you know, can attack any part of the plant. It can attack the leaves, it can attack the stems, it can attack the flowers. And today, after so many years of rose growing, we seem to have a good control over powdery because we have not seen much of powdery in the last 4 or 5 years. Right, Sunil? When the leaves are affected like this, you can no longer export roses. The worst fear for a rose grower is downy mildew. Downy mildew is a disease that attacks the plant during the winter months. When the nights are cold, when the nights are very humid, there can be condensation on the leaves. The greenhouse is very cold. The night temperature falls, there is condensation of water on the leaves. If the water film stays on the leaves for more than 4 to 5 hours, downy spores germinate. It's not that downy spores are not present in the greenhouse, they are always present. But the conditions are not ideal for the spores to germinate. When the natural conditions become favorable for the downy spores to germinate, then you can easily identify downy mildew. It gives you pink spots, angular spots on the leaves, and then there is leaf fall. This is the worst nightmare for a rose grower, because once you have leaf fall, it also means there is root death. Any leaf fall also means that the roots will die. So when you have leaf fall like this because of downy mildew, then you have plants like this. Compare this to a slide that I showed you earlier. So when a plant becomes like this, loses most of its leaves due to downy mildew, what is it that you can do? You can rest the plants, but you lost your season. So you have to take preventive measures. See that there is sufficient ventilation in the greenhouse. Make sure that you take up preventive sprays for downy and so on. This is Kenya. In countries like Kenya, the incidence of downy mildew is very, very high. So what they do is they lift the curtains from the bottom. So when you allow the outside air to flow through the greenhouse from the bottom of the greenhouse, then there is some kind of a air movement. When air is still, when the temperatures fall, then there is condensation. But if there is some air movement, the humid air is not allowed to stand in one place, then condensation cannot happen. So this is the basic principle of letting the roll-up curtains go up in Kenya. Black spot, this is a bacterial disease caused by the organism Diplocarpon rosae. Not a very common problem in greenhouses, but if you do late hand watering, or if your plastic sheet is torn and you have had a rain, and if you have water on the leaves continuously, then you can run into black spot. The same as downy. Once you have black spot, then there is a lot of ethylene production by the leaves will fall. There can be cane dieback. This is again due to 2 or 3 different fungal pathogens. One is botrytis, the other one is Botrytis. So the stem was harvested, the organism entered the stem through the cut wound and caused dieback. Sometimes it can be very heavy and it causes cane canker. You lose the basils, the framework of the plant, and this tends to bring down the production levels. The other problem that we have been seeing in recent years is the crown gall. This is again a bacterial disease. It is caused by the organism Agrobacterium tumefaciens. This is present in the rootstock, it is present in the soil, it is present in the variety that you bud or graft onto the rootstock. And reports say that this organism can live in the soil for 10 to 12 years. So today the question is, where do you find plants free from crown gall? No answers. So people select rootstocks that are free from Agrobacterium. People select budwood that is free from Agrobacterium. So planting material is becoming costly. The people in Kenya are buying plants at 40 rupees if it is Agrobacterium free. We are still sourcing plants for anywhere between 5 to 10 rupees or 12 rupees for a top graft. But if you want to have Agrobacterium free planting material, then you have to go in for free material. The other problem that I have been seeing in the last 3 to 4 years is wilt. This can be caused by either verticillium or fusarium. Symptoms: death of the terminal meristem, yellowing of the leaves, wilt of the plants. And this is especially in a variety called born here. I have had 4 projects which had to get rid of the variety born here only because the plants died. And it is sudden death. It happens in about 1.5 to 2 months. After 1.5 to 2 months, you have to remove the plants, remove the soil because it's a soil-borne pathogen, and you have to replace it with new soil. There are other problems in rose growing. I thought I'll just mention it. Now, normally when you harvest a stem, you should get back a stem in about 45 to 50 days depending on the variety. But for various reasons, the plant decides to make it into a blind shoot. This is growing only vegetatively. It will never produce a flower. I mean, today we think that it is because there is too much of a load on the plant, or there is a potassium deficiency, or the light that we are getting in the greenhouse is not enough. Maybe, but there is really no crystal clear reason for blindness in roses. So what happens is your production levels will go down if you get blind shoots. Yellowing for various reasons. This could be waterlogging. If there's too much of water in the rhizosphere, the roots don't get enough oxygen, so they're not taking up anything. Oxygen deficiency. Yesterday Raju said there's no weeds in rose greenhouses. I see a lot of weeds. And this nut grass is, again very bad weed. So we have started looking at mulching in greenhouses. Yeah, please. This is nothing new, but we want, because we have problems in using mulching, because we need to bend. My feeling is that it tends to tear the plastic much sooner. I don't know. I'll be happy if the plastic stays for even 4 or 5 months. I don't want it to stay longer. Once the weeds don't come out for 4 or 5 months, then the competition is reduced. So in tomatoes, in capsicum, colored capsicum, we talk about 40 tons, 50 tons, 70 tons per acre per hectare. In roses, we talk about stems produced per square meter per year of greenhouse space, right? Number of stems that you can harvest per square meter. So there are 7 plants per square meter. So the number of stems that you can harvest per square meter per year of greenhouse space. So this again, as you can imagine, depends on the variety, the growing conditions, the location, what technical expertise or support you have, what experience you have as a rose grower, and so on. It ranges from 90 to 200 stems per square meter per year. This one will give you only 100 stems per square meter per year, Taj Mahal. I'll just circulate it, take a look at the quality of the stem. This is the export quality stem. So it ranges from 90 to 200 stems per square meter per year. So that means 1 hectare of roses yields between 12 lakh to 20 lakh stems per year. There are varieties that give 20 lakhs, there are varieties that give 12 lakhs. I've been to Hyderabad. The Commissioner of Horticulture called me about 4 years back to deliver a lecture to rose growers. I did, but I found that 80% of them were carnation growers. There were a few people who were interested in roses. The temperature of a place is dependent on the altitude of the place. Bangalore is sitting at 950 to 980 meters above mean sea level. Hyderabad is 505 meters above mean sea level. Kenya is 2000 meters above mean sea level. And South America, Ecuador is 3000 meters above mean sea level. Where do you want to grow roses? Yeah, higher elevations. The cycle can be a little longer, but you can get fantastic roses. Now, I knew there were 3 projects in Hyderabad which closed down for various reasons. One, I think, was taken up by the airport. Then the other project closed down because they couldn't control mites. And I heard that very recently somebody has put up a project with a fan and pad cooling system. I don't know if it is true. But I have been to Hyderabad, and I think that Hyderabad is not the place to grow roses. Unless and until you have whatever Raji was showing you, shade nets on the top, or maybe retractable roofs, misting, everything. But it becomes very expensive affair. See, at the end of the day, sir, it all points to one question. What are you spending to produce 1 stem of roses? What are you getting in selling 1 stem of roses? Today my cost of production is between 2 rupees 50 paisa to 3 rupees. If I can sell it for 1 rupee more, 4 rupees, and if I have 1 hectare of roses, and if I can get 4,000 stems every day, I make 4,000 rupees. Or from 1 hectare. But if my cost of production is 5 rupees and I sell it for 4 rupees, 1 rupee from my pocket for every stem. Ultimately it boils down to that. So
Bangalore growers has got cost advantage.
Yeah, Bangalore also we are fighting nature, sir. It is not that Bangalore is like Kenya or anything, no. Because most of my projects are in the Tamil Nadu area, Hosur, which is again a little hotter. Hosur is about 760 meters above mean sea level, and it is definitely hotter. But we don't get the best quality. We get comparatively better quality during the winter months, September to February. But during the other months, it is impossible to get. I mean, you are fighting nature, which you can't. Temperature, light, okay, you can reduce. But temperature is something, When I say that the optimum temperature for roses during the day is 26 to 28, you walk into a greenhouse, the outside is 33, the inside is 38, boss. What are we talking about? You feel like running out of the greenhouse, and the poor plants are sitting there from morning to evening. What can they produce? 32, 33 degrees is the cutoff point for the roots to take up nutrients. After 32 or 33 degrees, the roots say, boy, I'm not going to take up any more nutrients. So what happens? Shorter stem lengths, fewer petals, smaller buds, more mites, poor sprouting. Summer months are very bad. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Burning questions? The bud caps, yeah, I wish I had one in my pocket. Any market for that matter calls for big bud sizes. 5 years back or 8 years back, the Japanese believe in everything small. They wanted small buds. Their feet are small, their shoes are small, they wanted small buds. Today the Japanese are saying we want 5 centimeter buds. But if you grow roses in a place like Hosur or Bangalore or Shulagiri, the buds will only be 3.5 or 4 centimeters. So what we do is we try to, the way in which a bud cap works is a little tricky. When you put a bud cap onto a bud about 7 to 8 days before harvesting, then what you find is, if you open a rose bud, you will find small petals on the inside. We call them petaloids. These petaloids become bigger when you put a bud cap. Number one. Number two, for some strange reason, although I'm a plant physiologist and biochemist, I fail to understand there is a reduction in the way that the bud uses the sugars. So there is more sugars available for growth. We keep the bud caps and put them in the cold room, we get another 10% increase in the bud size. And that is what an exporter wants. That is what an importer wants. That is what the markets want today. Big sizes, no number of petals. Anything less than 5 centimeters is not. So it costs about 32 paisa, and we can use it for 2 times. So you have to add that 16 paisa onto your cost of production. Does that convince you? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Does this mean that we should switch to not anaerobic fruits like Ooty, Darjeeling?
You have other problems in Ooty. I have given the same lecture in Ooty to the Upasi growers who wanted to get into rose growing. You have other problems. Yeah, during the day temperatures it's okay, but the nights are killing. Ooty, night temperatures are killing. I would be looking at something like 1,500 meters, 1,200 to 1,400 meters. And I went and saw a project near Hassan, you know Sakleshpur. That's a little elevated. And they were also having problems of downy. It's better to grow roses here and not have downy than to have downy and lose the export season completely. I'm sure it's the same with what, Kumar, in Coorg? Yes. I'm sure you run into very cold nights.